Today we're going to be talking about the effect of the no tolerance policy on the 2020 presidential election. So if you watched my previous video about North Korea, I said this could be the killing of the Osama bin Laden for Donald Trump. And now this no tolerance policy is going to come and haunt him for the rest of his life, frankly. This is going to be something that's going to be mentioned by Democrats a lot, and it already is being mentioned by Democrats for the 2018 midterms. And this is one of the few things that I think will actually stick with the president. He can do a whole thing with Stormy Daniels. He can do a whole thing with the Russian scandal. But right now, this one is one that directly affects a number of key swing states and immigrant voters that it's definitely going to make an impactful results and impactful or a negative impact on the president when it comes to the 2020 election and the 2018 midterms. So I just uploaded a video about the effect of this on the 2018 midterms, but this is also going to affect the 2020 election. So every time Trump does something good, he always does something that really takes away from that. When it came to North Korea, his approval rating was going up. His handling of foreign affairs approval rating was going up. And then this happens. Okay, when he does other things that are pretty prominent, things usually follow it that are negative for the president. And it could be the national news media twisting it, but he's also not making the smartest decisions. Like, the things he does definitely are being reported by the news media, and people that like to defend the president say they're just covering the wrong material. They're not covering the good things. Well, if a president does something crazy or something that shouldn't have been expected by a president, unpresidential, of course the media is going to cover it. The media isn't there to boost up your president. They're there to tear him down. And you can't say that the media or if you take like an example, if you take CNN and they're reporting of the president, yes, it may not be the most fair. Yes, it may be bashing the president, but they did that to Obama. They did that to Bush. They did that to Clinton. And it's not because they're against the president. It's because they are just trying to get viewership up, and also the fact that the president isn't making the smartest decisions. And when a news media company reports on what the president does and they don't report on the good thing, well, that's what they're meant to do. And also, it's not just the news media's fault. The president does, again, dumb things, and it's not good for him. His whole thing with Twitter, the reason why that's mentioned a lot is because no president should be acting that way. He's different. He's completely different, and not in a good way. You may think that this makes fear strike into our enemies' hearts. No, it doesn't. It really just shows our inability to have a leader who is very clear and concise about their statements, because Trump has flip-flopped numerous times the past week, and this is why this is going to impact the 2018 midterms, this election, the 2020 election, and it's not going to be beneficial for the president. Before he could recover, now since he's number one, signed an executive order going against his original actions and then coming out again and having his administration make it seem like he wasn't even the one who had started it all, and his administration contradicting what he says, it's not looking good for him. I think people will forget about it in a while, but Democrats are going to be the first people to bring it back up. And again, not good for the president. So enough talking about that. There are states that are never going to flip, and I start this off the same way in every video, but I'm not doing it through using the poll closing schedule. We're just going to go through the electoral map. So again, states that never flip, solid Democratic and Republican states against the president that are never going to go red. And there are states that are never going to go blue as well, up across the Midwest. Other than a few certain districts and a couple of swing states, pretty much the entire Midwest is red. And when we're looking at the map, okay, now we filled in almost all the safe states for the president at this time. So now we need to start filling in the safe states or likely states for the Democrats. So we're going to do this in a shaded region because I am going to show the swing towards the Democratic or Republican parties in each specific state. So let's take the state of Arizona, for example. I wanted to save this one for last, but I need an example. That one's going to be leaning in the Democratic column. I'm not saying that this one is going to be won by the Democrats in 2020, but right now it's shifting a little bit more to the Democratic Party because of the effect of the president in these states. The reason why I'm not doing it in these safe states because it would look dumb to have Wyoming shift a little bit more blue. Even if it's by 0.3%, I would need to acknowledge that. So I'm not going to acknowledge it in some of these safe states. I'm going to only acknowledge it in swing states. So if you don't watch the full video, you'll probably be confused by the end of it. And I'm going to get a comment of someone saying Texas isn't going to go blue in 2020, or a state like Virginia, or I've seen a number of comments because people fail to watch the video, and, it's probably because the content's long. I understand that. You don't want to watch a 7 to 8 minute video or a 12-minute video sometimes. I get it, but if you're going to skip to the end, sometimes you actually need to watch the full video. So at the end, I'll probably clarify it in case anyone skips to like 10 seconds before the end. But enough talking about that. We're going to go through the map. So New Mexico obviously is going to be likely for the Democrats. I think this one shifts it way more in the Democratic Party's favor. I really do not see this as beneficial to the president at all, especially amongst Latino voters. When we go to the state of Nevada, I also see this one as leaning for the Democrats. I think this one pushes them over a little bit more. When we go to Nebraska's 2nd District, corralling Republican voters is something that you really need to do in Nebraska's 2nd. John McCain failed to do it. Mitt Romney successfully did it. Donald Trump kind of did it, and he was able to win there. This is possibly going to either destroy the GOP or unify it. And right now, with the 56% approval rating, the no tolerance policy amongst Republicans, yes, it's a majority. I don't think it's enough to bring everyone together. But again, there's always been opposition to the president and his policies in the Republican Party, just not by these numbers. But I think that in Nebraska's 2nd, the issue of immigration probably won't be a top-notch issue. When we go to the Rust Belt, the economy is probably something that's extremely important. I actually think that they could be mildly indifferent, but I see how this one could narrowly shift to the Democratic column just based off anything can impact the Rust Belt. When we go over to a state like Iowa, actually Minnesota, that one would be, of course, impacted. In Virginia, I actually see this one as likely for the Democrats. We really don't see a time where Donald Trump could actually win the state of Virginia. But when we go down to a state like Georgia, I think Georgia could narrowly land in the Trump column. I don't think this is going to push him over the top, but I think it's going to bring over a little bit more of the Republican vote to his column. He really lacked with the Republicans down in Georgia in the 2016 election. He lacked them in Arizona. He lacked them in Texas. But he was able to gain them all across the Rust Belt in states like North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, Florida, which was surprising. But it's not necessarily the most unexpected. With demographic shifts, we could see how those numbers turned out. When we go down to Texas, I see the whole border fiasco and the no tolerance policy as a push for the Democrats, which is why I'm pushing this one into their leaning column. I'm not saying they're going to win there, but I think this one is going to definitely help them in the 2020 election. Georgia, I actually don't feel comfortable enough saying this actually helps the president in the state of Georgia. Now that I'm thinking through it, they're probably, again, indifferent about it, considering it doesn't directly affect the African-American community or the white community in Georgia, and can't say it will be beneficial or hurtful to the president just yet until we actually see numbers come out from a state like Georgia. But when it comes to the Sun Belt and the polling numbers out of the Sun Belt and out of the entire United States, yes, I can make a call about the Rust Belt or a call about the Sun Belt. But when it comes down to pure toss-ups like the state of Georgia or ones that were narrowly in the Trump column, with communities that aren't directly affected by this, and you could argue that the Rust Belt isn't directly affected by this, but this is areas that the littlest thing by the president could alter it into the Democratic or Republican Party's favor, whereas Georgia's already in the Republican column, so we still need a little bit more information about that. North Carolina, again, I think that they would also be considered indifferent about it. But Ohio, we'll come back to that one. Florida, I see as narrowly pushing for the Democrats because, again, this is going to help them with Hispanic voters coming out and voting in 2018 and then in 2020. When we go up to New Hampshire, I see this one as already in the Democratic Party's column. Up in Maine, again, another state in the Democratic column, but that 2nd district is probably remaining, again, indifferent about the whole situation. I don't think it's going to help him or hurt him, referring to the president, of course. But looking at the map, 126 electoral votes for Trump and then 182 that are safe for the Democrats, and 28 I do expect them to win in the likely, and then a couple states I expect them to win. They're not going to win Texas. They're not going to win Arizona. They could win the Rust Belt. They could win Florida, but again, these two are pretty much out of their reach right now. Actually, Arizona, depending on the candidate, but Texas, absolutely not. And then looking at the map, Iowa, that one I think could positively affect him. I think with this type of conservative, more rural type voters, I think this could help him with them, but I don't think it's going to help him in the Rust Belt. Iowa is different than Michigan. Iowa is different than Wisconsin. Iowa is different than Minnesota, and Iowa is different than Pennsylvania. And we saw it in the margins in 2016. We also saw it in the margins in 2012 and then in 2008. So again, these states aren't always going to vote the same way, and they're not going to be impacted the same way, but I think Iowa could be a little bit positive for the president. And Ohio, African-American population, white working class population, of course there is a Hispanic population, but it's not enough to make it and it's super impact on the electorate. So I'm actually going to put this one as in the toss-up column because I don't think it helps or hurts the president, but I also think that this could possibly corral a little bit more of the Republican voters, but not so sure about the full I can't find the word for it, but the full impact of Hispanic voters in the state of Ohio, it probably levels out amongst gain Republican voters versus gain Democratic voters. So when we're looking at the final map, if you skip to the end, I'm not saying Texas or Arizona are going blue. I'm not saying Florida's going blue. I'm not saying the Rust Belt's going blue. I'm saying that the states that are shaded in are leaning more in the favor of a specific candidate because of this no tolerance policy. The yellow states are ones that probably have no effect based off this whole border fiasco. But looking at the map again, this definitely benefits the Democrats just based off President Trump's inability to successfully spearhead this and make it go under the wraps like he used to with other scandals. This is something that's going to be mentioned by the Democrats time and time again. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.